Hey again, welcome back to Rewildology, where we explore conservation, travel, and rewilding the planet. I'm your host, Brooke Mitchell-Norman, conservation biologist and world traveler. If you just clicked on this episode and haven't listened to part 1 of my conversation with Daniella, then I recommend hitting pause and heading to episode 14 to listen to her background and all of the phenomenal research she's performing. If you've already listened to part 1 or don't mind picking up in the middle of the conversation, then great, stay right here. In part 2 of my conversation with Daniella, we explore the struggles she's encountered throughout her career and what she's had to overcome to continue moving forward. We also chat about when she thinks she'll finally have reached success and gives fantastic life advice that you'll definitely want to hear. If you're digging this show, please follow and share wherever you're listening. Sharing is the best way to help the show grow, and I promise to continue bringing on fascinating guests and topics. Now, let's get to part 2 with Daniella.
At the end of the day, I do a lot of health measures based off of hormones and different biomarkers. And when it comes to elephants in the field, it's all non-invasive. So primarily feces, but sometimes urine. And if it's in the zoo, some of those, but also blood. So, yeah.
That's awesome. You're making me want to go back. Oh my gosh. I geek out on this stuff.
I have the itch. I've been trying to continuously figure out when it is we can get back in the field. And every time I set, okay, it's going to be this month, there's more developments with COVID and just keeps getting pushed back. But so the orphan elephant study was supposed to start last April. And because of COVID has been put on pause. So now what we're doing is actually starting next month. I'll start training research assistants there in Zambia via Zoom. So online training, showing them videos that I already have of sample collection and walking through everything so that we can get it going and not continue to wait because we're already, about a year behind schedule here. So just because of the uncertainty with the state of COVID, we didn't really want to keep waiting until I could get back over there. Because like I said, every time it changes. And what's really funny is, so I was in Congo last year. And I was supposed to be in Africa for all of 2020. So about 6 months of my time in Congo, 2 months of my time in Uganda, 2 months of my time in South Africa, and 2 months of my time in Zambia for all these different projects.
Wow. And then, sounds like a dream.
Yeah, that was the dream. That was the dream. And then because of COVID, I had to come back COVID. I had to come back early, and my friend just last week, she showed me some WhatsApp messages I sent her. And while I was leaving, Congo was like, it's fine. I'll be back in 4 to 6 weeks. It's totally and that was, about 10 months ago. And yeah. 4 to 6 weeks, sure. Okay. So it was just, everybody, I don't think anybody realized the extent of what was going to happen, but I definitely was naive about it. And I was like, fine, I'll be back by the end of the summer. Obviously not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I still sit here in Bloomington trying to figure out when I could get back.
Yeah.
Meow.
Oh, wow. Your projects sound, oh my gosh. I cannot wait to read your papers. I love reading scientific papers. I cannot wait to read it when it comes out.
It's going to be some time still because all of it, some of it is data collection still. And a lot of our dung samples are still in range country. And then again, because we're about a year behind, it just takes time. Science takes time. But yeah, I know I'm biased. I just think the projects are super cool, and I'm excited also to see the results.
They are super cool.
What's happening. Yeah, do you have any questions about them? I don't know.
I rambled for so long. You did such a great job laying them out. Most of my questions now are what you're starting to find, but it sounds like it's way too preliminary to, to really start diving into what you're starting to find. But we'll have to do a follow up for sure. And
happy to.
Once they're starting okay, so preliminary data, this is what I'm starting to find. I would love to hear that. Because you have so many, things out there right now, so many things brewing, and can't wait to hear what you find.
Thank you. Yes.
So to transition a little bit, but not that much.
That's okay.
So I'm for me, example, I've never had a professional research position, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure a lot of people listening haven't either. So how exactly do you do that? Like, so you had your PhD,
Mm-hmm.
and now you're at Indiana University. So like, how does that work? How do you make a career out of research, and how the hell do you get funding for these unbelievable projects? Because obviously that income from your pocket.
Yeah, no.
So so how does that work?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. I too was in the dark probably for a good part of my PhD as well. Like, I remember when I first started my PhD, I was like, awesome, being a student again. That means I have like winter break, spring break, summers off. Not true. That is not the
Not
case.
true.
That is not the case. So yeah, there's a lot of I don't know if mysticism is the right word, but definitely unknowns about how academia works. So yeah, you get your PhD, and I can't speak for all PhDs, right? Because every different field is different. But mine is a hard science, so we could talk about hard sciences, let's say, and probably fairly similar if you're looking at ecology, biology, or anything along those lines. Um, so some people try to go into academia or continue in academia. Other people go into industry jobs. So I have a friend who works for an industry, and she does like research and development for them. You
Mm-hmm.
could go into kind of like editorial stuff for scientific publications, and be the person that reads the papers and provides the correction, stuff like that. But if you want to continue doing research or teaching, you're probably going to stay in academia. And if you want to just do teaching, you don't necessarily need to do a postdoc, which is my current position. So a postdoc is really necessary and has increasingly become necessary as faculty positions are harder to come by. But if you're going to continue doing research, and it's kind of that in between period where you are a doctor, you have your PhD, but you still need more training, or you're trying to get another more tools for your toolbox, let's say. And so you still have mentors, but you have a lot more autonomy and um, longer leash, let's say. But you still
Mm-hmm.
have a safety net there if you need it. And so that's the position I'm in. And you find that position through networking, you find that position through job postings, talking to your mentors, seeing if they know anyone, depending on your field. It's also a good time to pivot in your research. So let's say, I could use my friend, for example, who we have the same mentor now. His PhD was studying. Oh, I hope he doesn't listen to this because it's going to be a little wrong. But it was the effects of phosphorus on the liver or something like that in mice. No, rats, in rats. But it was very, basic science and wet lab work. And now he's more interested in the rigor of science, reproducibility, transparency, so the quality of science, which is very different. So most of his work now is just strictly on a laptop, right? And so he's pivoted tremendously during his postdoc. For me, my pivot wasn't as major. It's still elephant physiology based, elephant biology based, but I'm pulling in new aspects. I'm pulling in this aging component. I'm pulling in this psychosocial component with the early life trauma, right? These new areas that I didn't receive training in. So it's an opportunity to grow your research portfolio, to gain more skills, and to become more proficient as a scientist. And then from there, again, if you're still continuing to try to stay in academia, then you'll look for an assistant professorship at a university. And that would likely be a tenure track position. And again, looking at job postings and reaching out through your network and applying. But you could also go a different route if you don't want to do tenure track, which would require teaching at an R01 university, which is like a major research university. You still have to teach if you want to get tenure. But if you don't want to teach, you could be like a research scientist. So it's a faculty position, but it's not tenure track. And so you don't have a teaching obligation. You just strictly do research. And so then for your research and how you make all this work is what you're asking. There's something called soft money and there's something called hard money. So hard money is part of your salary that's coming from the university. So they're paying you for certain, let's say, expectations. And usually that's comes in the fact of teaching. So different departments and different programs have different teaching loads. Sometimes it's 2 courses for 2 semesters. Sometimes it's 1 course for 2 semesters. It just depends on your department, what you negotiate. But you could also buy yourself out of those teaching requirements through grants. So you put in a grant, and in your budget, you budget for all like the supplies, equipment, analyses, but also part of your salary, a percentage of your effort is on that grant. And so depending on how much that is, you could potentially buy yourself out of having to teach a class. So now more of your time is guaranteed for research, and less of that time is now on teaching. And so that's kind of, how it works. And there's funding, different mechanisms depending on your area. So for me, a lot of my research for the aging goes to the NIA. So the NIH just has a massive budget, so you have more money there. There's also the NSF, which is kind of the NIH's counterpart, that is more theoretically and less applied based and has nothing to do with human health. So if you even insinuate human health, you're not going to get funded with the NSF. So those are the 2 like U.S. government funding agencies. Then you have foundations. So I've received a grant from the Morris Animal Foundation, the Epley Foundation, and they just have different like statements or of purpose, right? So the Morris Animal Foundation focuses on animal health. The Epley Foundation focused on, let's say, risky projects. So projects that likely wouldn't be funded by traditional mechanisms because they are like at that bleeding edge. They're cutting edge and new and innovative. I get a funding from zoos. Yeah, and then there's, people have donors. I don't have like long-standing donors, but I'm always on the lookout for like, research sugar mama or sugar daddy.
Yeah.
But yeah, people have long-term donors who donate to their research yearly. And, crowdfunding campaigns are another way that you can get money for your research. So there's a lot of different ways, but the traditional mechanisms are grants through either governmental agencies or foundations. Yeah.
Thank you. That was such a good explanation of it and how that actually works.
Yeah. Well, and it's I hope that was clear. I know it's a complicated process, but if anyone listening, has questions, they can always email me. It's not a problem.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. Because, I've not personally been on that path. So I've only heard, just by meeting people, what exactly that entails as well.
I'm learning too as I'm moving up my ladder. And so some of this stuff is new for me and things I'm going through right now. But yeah, it's definitely a learning curve in academia.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yes.
Yeah. So kind of the next question, a little bit more on a like a more personal note, but since I think we've all had our stories and just, our ups and downs in life, for you, what has been like one of your biggest struggles through your career? Mm-hmm. Or was there a particular moment that was hard and in the end was a good life lesson? But I know I've had a few in mind and a lot of the guests I've had on as well. But for you, have you had any like hard struggles or defining moments that was just a little difficult?
Yeah. Agree 100%. I feel like everyone has them. And so if someone is experiencing one, they should not feel like they're alone in that. So I'll talk about 2. One I feel like I've talked about a little bit, but is actually slightly self-induced because I continue this path, but elephants in public health. And, I continuously choose to go down this path. And that's because I see all the upsides to it, but that does not mean it does not come without its hardships and challenges. And so there are some people that don't buy in, and there are some people who don't get it and they don't see it because it is so outside the box and it's not traditional and it's not what people expect. And there's pushback. It's like, well, how does this fit? And well, why is this type of research in this department, or things along those lines. So it is a constant battle, and it hasn't changed, where I have to continuously defend my position and defend my research. And I think what helps with that is, one, having the support again of some key individuals who are, more senior to you, especially for me still being at an earlier stage in my career. So that's very important. Having that backing, knowing I have someone going to bat for me, and knowing I have people supporting me. But again, also like standing firm in your convictions and knowing the value you're providing and the value your research is providing. And so that's not saying that it's easy by any means, but staying true and the belief in yourself and in your research of doing good quality science, but also science that's transformative, science that is going to push that needle. And you're not just doing the same type of study that everyone else is doing, that's giving the same exact answers and the same exact information, but that you're expanding the breadth of the scientific literature in your field. So that's kind of what keeps me going, but also practice having to say how I fit, having to talk about why elephants for human health and the value that they provide. And I started having to do that during my PhD, but I still to this day practice and have to continue to evolve that answer. So it just keeps getting refined and stronger and cleaner and more succinct. So that's definitely has been a challenge that kind of pops up throughout my career every so often. And then another is actually field work. And I think, especially young people, I've had a lot of undergrads who reach out and they want to get involved in the research, but what they really want to do is go to Africa and be there. And I get it. I agree. But I don't think everyone realizes what goes into field work, and especially where you are. And I've had, again, a few different projects in a few different countries. And so everything is a little different. Some are more isolated, some are very remote. Some have more infrastructure and some have less. But regardless, even in the countries that do speak English, I still have constant communication. I don't want to say battles because that seems a little too extreme, though I do have some of those. But you always have to be mindful of your communication because the culture is different. And so how you say something is not necessarily how they'll say it or how they interpret it. And definitely that's, communication is a thing in the countries that English is not spoken. And so figuring out how to communicate efficiently and effectively, figuring out what works in the field site and what doesn't, and knowing that it doesn't matter how well you prepare. It doesn't matter how many contingency plans you have, or if you think you've done everything and checked everything off, things are going to go sideways. And you just have to know that's going to happen. You're going to have to roll with it. And you have to, just be open-minded, stay on your toes, and just realize, hey, it's fine. What's the next step? How are we moving forward? And again, all that's easier said than done. I mean, I've definitely have been, let's say, proverbially hit by Mother Africa, making sure she knows that that she's the boss still, and feeling like, oh my goodness, like I should have known better, or why didn't I think about this, or whatever, self-doubt. And you gotta take a step back and take a breath and realize, hey, this is to be expected. And you're not the only one who goes through this. Like, fieldwork has a sharp learning curve, especially when you are leading the project, not when you're just, I shouldn't say just, but not when you're collecting the data, but when you are responsible for everything and anything. There's going to be some hits, and there's going to be times when you're just like, dude, WTF. And then, there's also when you're in the field for a long time, there's the social aspect, isolation, missing things at home. There's always that you have to consider. But I'd say that. The other thing I want to point out is everyone has imposter syndrome, and you should keep that in mind when you feel like you don't know enough, or you're not qualified enough, or how did I get here? I shouldn't be talking about this. I shouldn't be leading this. I shouldn't be doing this. Like, I don't have the skills. Oh my gosh, I'm a fraud. Everyone feels that way. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're at in your career, and you just need to remember, like, I got this. So that would be the other little side note.
No, that was great. Thanks for that, because I know I've suffered from that many times, especially being
me too.
A female in a mostly male-dominated field. And not that was, anyone was ever sometimes outwardly condescending in some way, shape, or form. And then you always have these self-doubts, like, can I do it? I mean, this rewildology, like this podcast, I had several battles with imposter syndrome and getting this thing off the ground. It's like, is anyone even going to want to listen to this? And then just help keeping my eyes off myself. It's like, this is about the people. This is about you, Daniella. Like, and that, I know that's something that happened that helped me quite a bit with imposter syndrome, because it's still to this day, it's something I struggle with. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Really glad.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it's always there. It's always there.
Yeah. And for someone who has such a great resume like you do, I think it's really inspiring to hear that. It's like, wow, she's done all these incredible things, has these amazing projects. She has her PhD, she's a postdoc, and yet still, even someone that's, successful, still has imposter syndrome. So I think it's really, it's helpful. I mean, it helps. Like, we're all human.
I hope so.
And this big picture of life. So thanks for that. That was really great. So on that note, when do you think, or if you can even predict this, when do you feel like you'll have made it, or that you'll have reached success? Like, what is that for you and your career?
Oh man, what a question.
Or why?
What a question. I say that because I often think about that in my head, and I don't think I'm ever going to feel like I made it, to be honest. Not to say that, or to take away from what I've done, but I feel like there's always a next thing that I want. So for me, a recent revelation wasn't, hey, here's a faculty position. I made my dreams come true. That wasn't it for me. My dreams coming true is having and leading my own field research in Africa. That is what I had always aspired to do and have. And so that was kind of like, for me, my ultimate goal. But, as you reach certain, and I don't know if this is healthy or not healthy, but this is just how it works for me. When I reach certain milestones or goals, I then just refine that goal, or change that goal, or update that goal. And then that bar just keeps moving. And so, I want to ultimately, like, at the end of the day, when all is said and done and my career's done, I want to be known for, one, quality science. It's very important to me that the work I'm doing is sound, and my methodology is sound and clean, let's say, rigorous, but that it made an impact, that made an impact both on people, not just in terms of health, but like mentorship, next generation, things like that, inspired, like especially little girls. I think knowing that, hey, you can play in mud and get in with the lizards and the snakes and be out dirty in the field just like the boys. And hey, that is science. That is science. You don't have to just wear a white lab coat and be a guy and a man just at a bench somewhere, like a bench top, right? There are different types of science out there, and I want little girls to see themselves doing that. That's very important to me. But also with elephants, that we have elephants for generations to come. And some of the work that I'm doing, both in terms of things like this, just talking about elephants, and in terms of my research, has an impact on that outcome. But there's so many different big goals I have. Like, I want to be a talking head for some, and have input on some of the big conservation decisions for elephants, right? So that's a goal of mine. I want to continue to grow my field team and field sites and make it long-term and sustainable. That's a goal of mine. So I don't know, it kind of just keeps updating. And so I don't know if I'll ever feel like I've made it. Again, maybe it's part of imposter syndrome. It's like, I mean, these people could know or do know more about elephants than I do. I don't know. But at the end of the day, for me, it's something that drives me to continue pushing myself. And having those vulnerabilities and just reworking things in my head and just kind of keep it moving, I guess. But yeah. But it's funny you ask that, because I constantly think about it.
Thanks for sharing that. I think we all do. And I really love to ask that question, because I just think it really helps humanize all of us, and that we all go through this. Like, what is our actual goals in life? It's like, okay, I finally reached that thing. And then you realize that that thing it didn't fulfill you like you thought it was supposed to. And then, what are the next steps? And so, no, that's great. It sounds like you're going to have a life of learning, which will be super rewarding.
Yes. Yeah, you got to keep learning. You can't stay stagnant.
Awesome. So this has been so fun so far. I can't believe we're already to an hour and a half. This is amazing.
Yeah, have you been standing this whole time, by the way?
Yes, I have.
Oh my goodness.
I have a standing desk. So
yeah, I have.
I'm sorry. That's why I'm like swaying. I'm like moving all the whole time. No, that's just me.
No, you're totally good. Sorry if you hear my dog in the background. He's like, it's time to go outside. I'll take you with me if you don't mind me moving.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, take me with you. But yeah, so I know you've already given so many great points. But if you wanted to give a piece of advice for anybody listening, in any way, if they want to go into academia or maybe just in general, what is some parting advice that you would love to give to anybody listening?
I think it goes back to something I've said throughout the podcast, which is believing in yourself and staying true to that. Because everybody has their own agenda, and you just need to know what you want and trust and prepare yourself to be able to do that. So you can't just, not put in the legwork to get to that, right? You have to put that work in, and everything that goes on behind the scenes to get it accomplished. So it's not going to just magically happen because you believe in yourself. You need to believe in yourself, and you need to prepare yourself. But I mean, I feel like for me, remembering what it is that I loved as a kid and what I was passionate about as a kid is probably the best thing that you can do when it comes to your adulthood and what you make of your life, and intertwining that into however you proceed in like career or passion, like fulfillment. Not everyone gets their fulfillment from their career, but keeping those things in mind, what it is that you loved as a kid, what is it you were passionate about, what made you happy, and then wrapping that all up, believing in yourself, preparing in yourself, and then manifesting it, I guess. Something along those lines, I guess, I'd say.
That's great. No, that's great. Yes. Manifest it, visualize it, whatever you want to do, whatever you got to do
That's
to
right.
make it become real.
That's right. Well, I mean, I just think like there's confidence. Confidence is so important. And you just need to be confident in you. And confidence comes from a lot of different places, including being prepared, but also like, you got this, you can do it, and just go and do it, And if it doesn't work out, you take that as a learning opportunity. Why didn't it work out? You take it, you learn from it, and you apply that for the next opportunity. And then keep it going and keep it moving.
I love that. Yeah. You either succeed or you learn.
That's right.
There really isn't a failure. You either succeed or you learn.
That's right. I like that. Yes. Yeah.
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 Yeah. No, that's great. So if anybody listening wants to get a hold of you, what are some of the best ways? However, if there's an email, or I mean, you don't have to give your email, or like a website or anything.
Off the internet easily anyway. So on social media, you could follow me. I think all my social media is the same. It's my first initial last name. So DCHUSYD. And then, please reach out and email me if you want to get involved in the research, support the research. We have an elephant research fund through IU. You could email me, again, my first initial last name at iu.edu. So it's DCHUSYD@iu.edu. You could easily Google my name and IU and probably find me that way too. But yeah, follow me on all social media platforms. I probably post mostly on Instagram. My Twitter game is pretty weak, but yeah. I mean, yeah, you can't be great at all of it. You can't be great at all of it.
No.
But yeah, always email. Yeah, you can always email.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure that if anybody reach out, I will also send them your way in case anybody wants to get a hold of you. But this has been amazing, Daniella. And
thank you for having me.
I can't wait to get this out there.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was my pleasure.
Hey, thanks again for listening to this episode of Rewildology. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe button to never miss a future episode. Do you have a cool environmental organization, travel, story, or research that you'd like to share? Let me know at rewildology.com. Until next time, friends, together we will rewild the planet.